Till now, we have seen two principal organs of the United Nations in detail: General Assembly and the Security Council. Now, while the General Assembly assumes the role of a legislative organ, the Security Council is the executive. Now, the United Nations, therefore, must also require a judicial organ of its own, and for which purpose exists the International Court of Justice, which is the primary judicial organ of the United Nations. Let us look at this organ in detail in this lesson. The International Court of Justice, or ICJ in short, is the principal judicial organ of the United Nations and often acts as a world court. But why do we require a world court in the first place? So as mentioned, we have to address why is there a need for an international court or a world court, as the ICJ is often nicknamed. Do you not think that nations already have organized judicial structures of their own? In case of India, a three-tier organized judiciary exists, where at the lowest level, disputes regarding the districts are addressed. At the state level, the high courts are there to administer justice, and at the national level exists the apex court, which is the Supreme Court. Now, apart from administering justice at the national level, the Supreme Court also acts as the court which settles disputes between two states of India. Now, the Supreme Court can settle a dispute between two states of India. But what if a conflict or a dispute comes up which involves not two states but two countries? How can a national court of a nation settle disputes between two nations? Such as, for example, India has a long-standing conflict with Pakistan over Kashmir and also has disputes with Sri Lanka regarding fishing rights in the Indian Ocean and also regarding some islands such as the Kachativu Islet. So regarding these cases, how can the Supreme Court of India give justice when it involves another country itself? For this purpose, there needs to be an international court, and that is exactly the role the International Court of Justice plays. So as mentioned, the International Court of Justice settles disputes between nations and also administers justice on cases of international importance. Over here we see the logo of the International Court of Justice, the apex international court when it comes to international law, and here is a picture of the International Court in action delivering judgments. But is the International Court of Justice the first of its kind? Is it the first international court? Well, the United Nations succeeded the League of Nations. And similarly, thus, the ICJ, which is the judicial organ of the United Nations, also succeeded the judicial organ of the erstwhile League of Nations, which was named the Permanent Court of International Justice, which had been active since the year 1922 from the Peace Palace at The Hague in Netherlands. So after the dissolvement of the League of Nations, the International Court of Justice replaced the Permanent Court of International Justice of this erstwhile League of Nations. Over here we see a glimpse of the final session of the Permanent Court of International Justice, and here is when the International Court of Justice is taking over the function and the responsibilities from the PCIJ. Now the Peace Palace, a picture of which you can see over here, present at The Hague in Netherlands, which was the headquarters of the erstwhile Permanent Court of International Justice, became the headquarter building of the International Court of Justice when it succeeded the erstwhile Permanent Court of International Justice. Now, like any other organ of the United Nations, the International Court of Justice draws its powers and functions from the United Nations Charter itself. However, the role of the International Court of Justice as a world court is so vast that the UN Charter cannot provide the structure for its administration. To achieve the fair functioning of such an organ, therefore, an annexure or an addition was added to the Charter, which was named the Statute of the International Court of Justice. This became an integral part of the UN Charter when the International Court of Justice was formed. In fact, if we ever purchase a copy of the United Nations Charter, the Statute of the International Court of Justice comes with it, therefore showing how important it is for the overall functioning of the UN system. It is this statute which provides the spirit behind the organization of the International Court of Justice. Now, any nation which has ratified the UN Charter also automatically becomes a signatory to the Statute of the International Court of Justice. Therefore, all the 193 members of the United Nations who ratified the UN Charter automatically also became a member to the signing of the Statute of the International Court of Justice, thus automatically making them a member of the International Court of Justice. Now, a country which is outside the United Nations system can also approach the International Court of Justice by getting the approval of the United Nations Security Council or by simply being a signatory of the statute alone. It does not need to ratify or sign the UN Charter. As long as this country has at least signed the Statute of the International Court of Justice, that is enough ground for this country to approach the International Court of Justice. The Article 1 of the Statute of the International Court of Justice starts with the following sentences. The International Court of Justice, established by the Charter of the United Nations as the principal judicial organ of the United Nations, shall be constituted and shall function in accordance with the provisions of the present statute. This shows how important the statute itself is in the functioning and the very existence of the International Court of Justice. Now, the International Court of Justice was established in the June of 1945 and became functional since the April of 1946. Over here we see the first case brought before the International Court of Justice. The ICJ is composed of 15 judges, each of which is taken from different countries. Over here we see a glimpse of the panel of the 15 judges of the ICJ. And finally, the ICJ is headquartered in The Hague, Netherlands. And this is the headquarters of the ICJ, the Peace Palace. Now let us see how the judges of the International Court of Justice are elected. The General Assembly and the Security Council elect the 15 judges of the International Court of Justice from various member nations. Upon being elected, each judge holds a term of 9 years. Over here we see the election procedure taking place in the General Assembly and the Security Council, which is responsible for the election of the various judges. Now, can you answer this question? A judge of the International Court of Justice, once elected, holds office for how many years? Is it 5, 9, 8 or 6? The correct answer is 9 years. Now, as mentioned, the General Assembly and the Security Council are both equally involved in this election procedure. In fact, the election for the International Court of Justice judges take place in the General Assembly and the Security Council simultaneously but separately. In order for a nomination to win the election, they have to secure a majority in both the General Assembly and the Security Council. Thus, having a majority in both of the organs is crucial for a nominee to win the election. Now, while electing the 15 judges to the International Court of Justice, it is important to ensure that each judge is from a different country, and therefore all the judges are from all around the world. Now, while such a provision also exists while electing the non-permanent members of the Security Council, that is done to achieve geographical representation. In case of the election of the judges for the International Court of Justice, this is done to get legal representation. Now, what exactly do I mean by this term legal representation? Now, we all know that every nation has its own judicial system, and this system is often based on various trends, particularly trends of culture and history surrounding the region which this nation belongs to. Therefore, often many nations of the same region have similar legal systems. For example, in case of Arabic countries, they all have a similar legal system because they all follow the Islamic system of Shariat. Therefore, in order to have a representative international court of justice, the judges are thus elected from different countries, each belonging to different regions. So according to the statute, it is ensured that the International Court of Justice is representative of the main forms of civilization and the principal legal systems of the world, which, as we understood, is often based upon geographical region itself. In order to further maintain this representative structure of the ICJ, no two members of the International Court of Justice can be citizens of the same country. Thus, every single judge on the panel of the International Court of Justice need to belong from different nations. Now, just like any other election, the judges of the ICJ can only be nominated if they follow some criteria. The first of which is that they have to be the citizen of the country which is nominating them. This is a natural criteria. Then the nominee also needs to be apolitical and should be ready to work in an independent capacity. This is because once elected, the judges of the ICJ no longer have any national affiliation and they act as independent magistrates, and they need to be apolitical so that they can leave the politics of their homeland behind and can be truly unbiased when delivering judgments. The nominees should also be of high moral character, as they would be the judges of the highest international court in the world. And this is done by looking into their previous records, their own criminal history, and also the various judgments they have passed. Now, apart from having a high moral character, these judges also need to have a legal understanding. And that is why, in order to be eligible for nomination to the ICJ, the judges at least need to be eligible for appointment to the highest judicial office in their own country. If they are not eligible for the highest judicial office in their own country, how can they be eligible for the highest court of international law in the world? Now, finally, these nominees also need to be competent in international law, as the law of nations often differs from international law. Therefore, they must be able to interpret and also practice international law and must have some history in dealing with international law. So these are the criteria that need to be fulfilled so that a judge can be eligible for nomination and then can eventually be elected to the International Court of Justice. Now, how does the International Court of Justice move ahead with its proceedings? How can 15 judges work together? Now, for this, a leadership structure does exist in the International Court of Justice, where the ICJ elects from its own panel of judges a president and a vice president who hold office for 3 years and are eligible for re-election. Over here we see pictures of Joan Donahue and Kirill Gevorgyan, who were elected as the president and the vice president respectively of the International Court of Justice in the year 2021. Now let us look at the role of the International Court of Justice. First, it settles disputes submitted to it by different member states in accordance with international law. Secondly, it upholds, interprets, and codifies international law. And finally, it gives advisory opinions on legal questions referred to it by duly authorized international organs and agencies. This is a brief understanding of what the role of the International Court of Justice is. In this lesson, we were able to understand the structure of the International Court of Justice, the principal judicial organ of the United Nations. We also saw the role of the International Court of Justice, and it is this role which bestows upon the International Court of Justice various functions, which we will be looking at in the subsequent lesson. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at deltastep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.